No worries.
A one take 10-minute or
10 minutes. It means
that's so long for one take.
No, it's not.
Okay, whatever. Well, I don't know
do
what
you even
we're
watch
talking
the
about.
channel?
Nope. I don't watch
She
the
didn't
videos.
even see the one taker that we did.
I only watch the ones that have the highest views.
We want to do a quick video about growing up in Hawaii. You know, your experience growing up in Hawaii is different than mine.
Yeah.
And we did a video recently that wasn't edited. We just kind of flowed like a podcast and chatted. Mahe, born and raised in Hawaii, on the North Shore, surf capital of the world.
But I did move around a little bit.
Oh yeah, moved around. Actually, you moved. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like Central Oahu. Were you ever East
Pearl
Side?
City, never East Side.
You ever
but
Windward?
No, not Windward.
I was born on the mainland. When I came to Hawaii, they were like, "Oh, I don't know if you should go to that school that I went to," and I sounded like I was from Lower Alabama, North Florida. Keep the timer on us. Make sure we don't go. But how is it growing up as a local kid, like from a real young age, where it's indiscernible that you weren't born here?
I remember it being very like safe. Like I could run around. I don't remember my parents ever knowing where I was.
Yeah.
You know, that's like a charm thing about Hawaii. Like I remember it being.
Do you think that was like sorry to interrupt, is that like a of the time thing, or is that a Hawaii thing?
I think
a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Definitely, because it's still a little bit now.
A little bit more like that, like literally right here
Yeah.
than most parts of, say, California or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I know that it was like the street lights come on at 7 and you better be home by then. And if you're not, you hear your dad whistling in the front door and then you're sprinting up the road.
Yeah.
And I remember being barefoot all the time.
You tell your dad, "No, Dad, the lights were out over there."
I was like, no, I never see the lights never come on. Like, it's barefoot all the time, just outside all the time, playing in the dirt and the mud and being at the ocean. So young, we were like North Shore. And then for a while, my grandpa owned a place in Pearl City that we moved into. And because
Palisades?
No, like, man, not a great area. But
Hey, you're not supposed to say that.
it was a fun area. So like a lot of like homes, like a lot of families in Hawaii, it was, you know, you're multi-generational, or maybe the siblings all live together because that's just kind of the nature of how we are here.
Yeah.
So this was like a triplex that had my mom and her 2 sisters, and each of them had like one part of this triplex that my grandpa owned. That we all lived in the same like community, like house. So all the cousins together, everybody playing outside, sort of like anybody at anybody's house, eating at everybody's house. Like
uncles watching over the kids, even though it's not their kid. That something wholesome about Hawaii, especially when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
How do you think someone's experience might be different from growing up on the mainland, you know, compared to growing up in Hawaii? I literally grew up in both, but
I feel like you got to speak on that, because I don't think I even realized how different my life was, my upbringing, and how like as a mother now, and as my brother is raising his kids on the mainland, and having more people who I've met who didn't grow up here.
You can see your brother all the time. So.
I do, but like our childhood is just different from somebody, especially who grows up on the mainland. I don't have that experience, so I didn't even realize like how like charmed of a life, I would say, or like how like easy, like kind of carefree my childhood was, because I didn't have anything to measure that against. Whereas like you did that. You lived a different place, and then you came and saw, and then you decided, even as a kid, like I want to be there. Right. So you should speak on that, like the difference, because you lived both of them. You saw both of that.
Yeah. The come home before the street lights, you know, or when the street lights come on, you better be home in 5 minutes. Like I had that because I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, and it was Florida, you know, North Florida, Pensacola, Florida, where I lived, and for me that was more of an era than it was a Hawaii versus Florida thing. But when you talk about the way the community nurtured me here,
that maybe would be a big difference, right? Like if you're like, would you say that up there, do you think your parents would feel safe or feel like secure that a neighbor would have your back, like if something happened to you? Because here we definitely feel that, right? Like
it's different, right? Like I grew up in a pretty low income area in Florida. When I moved to Hawaii, a little more, it was a suburb. Like it wasn't the nicest and it wasn't the worst. So southern hospitality in Hawaii's aloha can be very similar. there's a lot of similarities, but the way like in the South you said like yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. Like for one, we didn't do that a lot. Until, like when I joined the military, that's when we did that. But it was like a forced, like you will say yes sir. Here it's like second nature, like oh how's it auntie, or, you know, help you across the it was just it's more like it's a part of the culture, a part of the being, and not this special thing that you do. It just is here, you know. It's hard to explain. When I came to Hawaii, so funny story, when I was in Florida, I went to pretty bad school, the worst middle school in Pensacola. And I thought, like, there's no way Hawaii, everyone's like wearing slippers, going surfing, everyone's gonna be cool, you know. And then one of your neighbors, actually, I was 8th grade, these guys were 7th grade. And one of my first weeks at school, these guys would get into a fight. And I run over, you know, I'm a young male, oh, fight. And they go in for an exchange, you know, and then the shoulders, they go in for an exchange. And literally, he knew how to fight, Bob. So and so the one guy pulls out a knife. He's like, because he lost the exchange, and I thought, oh, that's the end of it. Like, fight's over. And the Hawaiian Portuguese guy was like, bro, you think I'm scared of your knife? And he charges the guy while he's holding a knife, and I was like, oh, I thought Hawaii was gonna be like
softer.
Yeah, like I thought it was just wanted to go surf. You know what I mean? And it's almost like, for me, I love it because there's a code that, you know, stems from like a Polynesian warrior kind of thing, and then like even an Asian respect thing that blends with this Western thing that we have in Hawaii. And there's this code that, you know, I'm looking forward to teaching that will facilitate my 2 boys being young men who have a certain level of street smarts and respect that might be lost in a certain area, you know. But at the same time, it's not like people are pointing knives every day. That's an anecdotal, like, it was just a shocking thing.
That doesn't really happen.
There's just a shocking thing that I remember.
That's probably like one of the differences. Like my brother used to teach in Pomona, California.
Yeah.
And so some summers I'd go over there and like do like a volleyball camp or something with them. And I remember the first time, and I'm like middle school age at this point, maybe a freshman at the oldest.
Okay.
So I come to their school and it's like, there's like a metal detector. Like you walk in and there's like a metal detector and there's like security guards. Now, like the school I went to had security guards, but they were like 90 years old, and ain't nobody gonna like, you know, like I was like, uncle, like slow down so that uncle can, you know, talk to you. Like it wasn't like they weren't like there, like they were, you know, they just weren't. It wasn't like a cop at school, you know, like.
It can be different,
So it was just like shocking to me because we don't like, even in like the areas that we think are like rough, you know, like to us. Like we have really like zero concept of like what that really means. Like we're not walking through metal detectors. So.
Yeah, it's like rough because if there's a conflict, 2 men or maybe 2 women might square up and solve it and then shake hands afterwards. And that's might be more frequent, but it's not rough in the sense of like there's drive-by shootings very often or ever. I don't know if I've ever heard of one ever in Hawaii, but
and it's usually like they'll like duke it out, but then like shake hands after and be like, kid.
Yeah, like you can YouTube Hawaii fights and like the 2 dads after, like, good one. But I don't know, in an effort to keep the video shorter, like the experience of growing up on the mainland. So I grew up on the mainland. I started visiting Hawaii when I was 9 or 10. I stayed when I was 12. Went to intermediate, which is a different schedule of middle school here, and then high school. And it's just, I think educationally, I know I'm going off to a side topic, but educationally, the reason why we typically, Hawaii has lower test scores, etc., just culturally, education isn't valued in the same way that it probably is in Connecticut or in Silicon Valley surrounding Stanford, etc. At least not in the public school culture at scale. There's an average that's shifted in the other direction. But morally, street smart wise, it's such a short ride on this planet, on this earth. And to grow up kissing your auntie on the cheek and shaking your uncle's hand and grabbing him one beer, thank you, boy, and your uncle watching out for you.
Grab me one beer.
It's like Hawaii's culture is so special, and it's really a unique thing. There's just nothing like it. You meet military people who are like, you know, in their 20s, and they're like, no, I went kind of like me, right? Like they came in the middle school and high school, and I'm from Hawaii, kind of like I do.
Yeah.
But my dad was in the military, and they're like, they want to claim Hawaii, not Ohio, where they were, or not, you know, wherever. Like there's just the only other states with this kind of pride is like there's Texas pride. I don't know, that might be the second to Hawaii. Like, you know, there's just a special experience growing up here, and it's rooted in respect, aloha.
I mean, you have drama everywhere. You have whatever, like anywhere, even in Hawaii. But it's like, it's hard to have like a truly bad day when you look outside and it's still like a double rainbow and you know, a
sunset over the Waianae Mountains,
like
piercing through.
Just the Maukas, you know, like you wake up, you can see the mountain right outside your window.
Your mom already made rice. Right? You don't know what you're gonna eat, but mom already made rice. This was an unplanned video, and this is just rapping with Derek and Mahe. You know what I think we should do next time? We're not really supposed to speak to public schools and that experience, but private schools are like choosing a grocery store, or it's a paid service. You know, we have local and mainland and international people who are concerned about school, especially beyond elementary, and we'll touch on that in that video. Yeah. But since you went to private school,
public and private.
Oh, public and private.
Public and private. Yeah.
And Mahi has like beef with some of the private schools because they're her rivals. That'd be a good next video.
It has to be like competitive for it to be a beef, but
it's a beef. All right, hey guys, real quick, it's Derek Okahashi. Pick up the phone if you're not looking at the screen. I have 2 things to go over with you. So number 1, we're totally accessible. No matter where you are in the world, if you have a Hawaii real estate need, or maybe even a mainland real estate need, hit us up. We have our contact information in every video in the description. Number 2, we made a new website called myhawaiihomevalue.com. Go there, we'll give you a free valuation for your home, whether you need to sell in 10 years, or in 10 days, or never. You can get a free home valuation at myhawaiihomevalue.com.